Hey, welcome to Geek Talk. I'm Jonathan Chestnut, professor here at Fayetteville State University, and I'm with my partner Josh Coltrane. Soul Train. I always say Coltrane because I'm always like, cool dude, Coltrane. Hey,
I guess that works too.
that works. That works great. And welcome back to Geek Talk. It's the first one for the year. We've been sort of taking a break with the COVID, trying to keep our distance, but a lot of stuff happening. They're trying to keep us entertained while keeping us at home. So we got some superhero stuff to talk about. We got some esports stuff to talk about.
Yep.
And first, I guess the big thing, let's start with the oldest. We'll start with Wonder Woman 84.
Yeah.
What was your take?
It was the first movie we got in a year, I believe, for superhero related, and it was disappointing. I'll say at that. It was a good refresher, being we went a full year practically without any superhero content. But what I expected from it, it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't as good as the first one. It touched base with characters from the comics, of course, but I just feel like it could have been a lot better.
I don't disagree. I think the Wonder Woman was excellent. I think as far as like the character herself, I think there was a lot of the stuff on the boundaries, like the wishing stone and some of that stuff that wasn't as well defined. I know that the guy that played Maxwell Lord, he's also the Mandalorian. Love it. Is the problem is Maxwell Lord is a difficult character over a long period of time, and they tried to cram all of that into a very short window.
And including the cheetah character and everything, which was only there necessarily for Wonder Woman to have somebody to fight at the end of the day. So.
And they could have done a couple of different things with that. They could have promoted the cheetah. They could have brought in like Minerva or some of the other Wonder Woman catalog of characters that could have balanced it. There was one time when there was like an Amazon who had left the island, had been banished before for crimes or whatever, and then she worked as a thug for like Lex Luthor and stuff like that. She could have been like a good opponent, working for Lord or something like that. But I think what they were trying to do, I think it fell short. They were trying to make a sort of Marvel Universe level superhero movie without the dark DC undertone and all that. But it kind of fell short. There was like varying levels of power in the wish. There was,
it was kind of confusing too. It was like basic to understand. You get something, but you lose something. But then when it started going to the more crazy things, like how when he went to the president and all of this, I think it went downhill from there. Like it was trying to do too much, the movie.
Yeah, I think if it had just followed along like maybe the cheetah storyline and maybe introduced Maxwell Lord, introduced the idea of the wishing stone, maybe had taken into a second movie, give us some build up to it. I think that's what DC misses with when they're dealing with the sort of Marvel-esque.
Yeah.
Like we didn't get the Winter Soldier in the first Captain America. We got him in the third Captain America.
Exactly.
But they built up to that storyline. And I think DC wants it all in one jump.
And that's what happened with Justice League, honestly. They jumped the gun. They went from Man of Steel, which was an excellent movie in my opinion, and then Batman vs. Superman. I enjoyed it as well, but they went straight to Justice League. And Justice League introduced 3 new characters right off the bat. When with Avengers, we literally had Iron Man, Captain America, Thor. I believe Iron Man 2 had come out before then as well, which introduced Black Widow. And all the characters had already been introduced before Avengers, or the majority of them had. Right. So it's a course of 5-6 years of movies until Avengers, when 2 or 3 years, 2 movies for Justice League. So that's just DC's issue, in my opinion.
Well, I've always been a firm believer that one controls the movies and one controls TV. So, but I think Marvel's starting to really make some inways. So let's talk about WandaVision.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't talked about WandaVision at all since the first episode to
8th episode.
8th episode. So we're going to sort of go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so if you haven't seen it, and we're going to be spoiling it, now's your time to stop this and come back. and hear our great wisdom about what you've just seen.
Yep.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're off.
Yep. So, first 3 episodes are what you saw the most in the trailers. The black and white kind of old school TV shows back in the day, and it may have not looked entertaining to the average viewer unless you knew exactly how the multiverse works, in my opinion, or how Wanda's powers works. Me personally, I was all in for the show. I knew something was going on, that it's not just a sitcom. Wanda's doing something, or someone's provoking Wanda to do something. So first 3 episodes, you get its and bits of, something's going on here, little call outs to something's wrong with Wanda. Right when the 4th episode hits, everything starts going down more and more. And it's just been excellent. The pacing, this is nothing like the other Marvel shows. Even the quality of the Netflix shows, which were amazing, like Daredevil, Punisher, it's still an extremely different style. It is MCU, but in TV. The Netflix movies and shows were still, had that show feel to it, but this has an MCU feel to it, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think my problem with like the Netflix shows was that they never really solidified whether they were in the Marvel universe or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they talked about in some of the early Daredevil episodes the incident uptown.
Yeah.
And they talked about the reconstruction happening because of the incident uptown. But and at one point, someone tells Daredevil that he should just leave it to the Avengers or call the Avengers in or something like that. But it's like one line. And in a world where, you have thunder gods and gamma monsters and frozen super soldiers, I think they'd be in people's conversation a little bit more, especially when other superpower people started showing up, like, maybe you should be in the Avengers.
Exactly.
But I think we're going to see something happen with those. There's a lot of talk about
Yeah, they
Daredevil.
just released that. It was 3 years or 2 years. They had contract or something with Netflix, got terminated. So they had already purchased the characters back or gotten them, but the contract had to end. But now it's been released, so people are hoping that they start using Daredevil, Jessica Jones, the Punisher.
We see a reboot, or we see the characters brought from from those shows into like Disney Plus and then rolled into the Marvel universe.
Exactly.
That'd be cool. But I think with WandaVision, you're right. The first couple shows, I've been reading comic books since the 70s, and I was very much like, okay, what the hell am I watching? But as more and more get revealed, and that's what it was. It was a slow build into this kind of thing. And so it feels like it's the Marvel universe because we know the characters and we're comfortable with the characters. But it's also a slow build because we're also used to, like in the Marvel universe, something explodes and someone comes running out with a shield or a blast or armor. And that's not really what happened in the first 3. It was this sort of, nothing violent really occurs. But I think as we've progressed along, the question has been, does Wanda know what she's doing? Did Wanda plan this? And the answer has become, as far as the last episode 8, is that no, it wasn't what she planned. That this is something that she made happen, but she was driven to this. She comes back after being blipped away, and the Vision is dead. She can't find the body. She finds out the body's at Sword, and then goes and, the guy kind of provokes her. I think he's trying to get her to reboot him or get him restarted because they haven't succeeded in doing it. And yet she walks away. So does he know that she goes to New Jersey? Does he know that that's what's happening when he sends Monica up there? Monica's right?
I believe
Photon.
so.
I go by superhero names. Her name is Photon, Spectrum. She has a whole bunch of superhero names. She was Captain Marvel at one point. He sends her up there by herself to investigate this. So does he know that she went there?
And that's what's strange too, because the way you even said it, it sounds like he was trying to provoke her to do something, and he didn't get the response he wanted out of her. And I don't know if did Vision leave that note in the car for her, or was that sent from?
See, that's where
Yeah,
the
that's
last
where I'm confused. That's the note there. Did someone leave it? Or, and if someone did, then that's what triggered her. But if it was from the past, then okay, that's understandable. But depending on what that note came from, that
So,
maybe means someone.
There's a couple of thoughts on that because one, the Avengers compound that they were staying at is in New Jersey, right? It was our upstate New York.
It's somewhere upstate, I believe.
So it's in the geographical region. I found it interesting because when she was driving through the town, it was like the town was like really run down. It was maybe 2 generations past. Why would Vision buy a house in this town? Now, unless what we're seeing is after the blip, because we saw in the movies after
it was run down a little bit.
Everybody was run down. The cities were run down. I mean, the Statue of Liberty boats have been all tied to it, and so was that a byproduct of the blip, or was someone leading her there? Was somebody setting her up? And that's where, if Nightmare is involved or Mephisto is involved, if Krython is involved, which Krython's a sort of minor bad guy in the Marvel Universe that fights Doctor Strange, and he's possessed Quicksilver in the past, he's possessed Scarlet Witch in the past, and he's the one that wrote, I don't know if he wrote The Darkhold or if he wrote the other book. There was another black magic book. But Krython goes back to the first emergences to evil on the planet and blah, blah, blah. So we don't, and so there has been speculation that when she brought fake Pietro, that it's actually Krython that's manipulating it. But then she talked about that she could see through his eyes, hear, so it's like a puppet. So maybe it's not.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see. But I think what I've taken from this last one is that Agatha may not be the big villain. They wanted us to think Agatha's the big villain, but I think Agatha is there because she sensed the magic.
Yeah.
And Wanda's not really the big villain because Wanda has done all this, but she isn't really in control.
Yeah, and the thing with Agatha too isn't that she's being a villain, she's also confused, I think, at how it seems like she's confused at how Wanda is able to do all this without knowing any runes, any magic, anything of that sort, and the scale of what she's doing. Like she shows in the beginning when she makes the bug a bird, and she's
Those
like,
little things.
yeah, she's like, this is simple things, but what you're doing is on a grand scale, and Wanda has no knowledge of the magic at all.
Well, in the comics, Wanda is called a Nexus. And they made a reference to it when they were talking about the medication. Nexus beings can change reality by blending universal variance. And that's like her probability thing, is where she's adjusting the universe. So like in one universe, that chair suddenly falls apart. So she replaces this universe's chair with that universe's chair, and it falls apart. So she's able to affect the multiverse like that, and I think that's where we're going to build into the multiverse of madness. So that takes us into Doctor Strange.
Yep.
Multiverse of Madness. I have nothing to say about Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness yet.
There's so little, I think, to know about what's going to go on. We know Wanda's going to be in it. I think that's been confirmed already.
That's been confirmed.
But so far we only know Doctor Strange, Wanda, and I think there's said Nightmares in speculation. I'm not sure if that's set in stone, but that's who's speculated to be the villain of that movie.
Well, Spider-Man's going to lead into it as well, right? So we're going to get this, then WandaVision's going to end. We're going to get Winter and Falcon Soldier.
Loki. Yeah.
Loki might lead into it as well.
I think so. Being that it looks like he's going into different universes, I think that's going to lead into it as well. Just by the little bit we saw in the trailer, it kind of looks like, I don't know too much about it, but it looks like kind of the Time Patrol or like the Doctor, really, like how they go in different they're pretty much the protectors of the universe and the multiverse. That's what I caught from it. I'm not sure if
They're
that's
the
exact.
multiverse. They're the multiverse police force, and I think
Mm-hmm.
the best speculation that I've heard from Loki is that the villain in it is going to be the female Loki.
Mm-hmm.
That in the universe where males are females, females are males, blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that the opposite is, that she's a really bad
Mm-hmm.
character, and so they've tried to take her down, and now she's just bouncing across the multiverse
Mm-hmm.
either, and so they want Loki to help try to capture her.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting because in the comics we had female Loki for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. But we might also see, now that we have got 1, 2, 3, we have 4 of the Young Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the Hawkeye character coming,
Mm-hmm.
the girl. We have Stature, which is Ant-Man's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have Billy and Tommy, which
Yeah.
is
Wanda's children.
Wiccan and Speed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's 4 of the Young Avengers. And then in the Loki miniseries, if we get a young Loki,
Mm-hmm.
because in the Young Avengers there's Kid Loki,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a multiverse version of Loki that's still a teenager.
Yeah.
So that might be interesting. We might be building, because I know they were building towards this sort of young team
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So, but Spider-Man, tons of speculation on Spider-Man.
Yeah. So what's set in stone already, 100% sure, Jamie Foxx's Electro's in it. They haven't said if it's Amazing Spider-Man's Electro. I think they said it's going to be a little different, the design of it. But Jamie Foxx playing Electro, I mean, definitely it has to touch base something about Amazing Spider-Man universe. And then Dr. Octopus from the Sam Raimi trilogy with Tobey Maguire. His Dr. Octopus is going to be in it. So take that as you will, but that sounds like multiverse.
Well, I think, and we talked about this earlier, is that with the Spider-Verse, with the Miles Morales Spider-Man and all that, I mean, if we could get a live action Miles Morales rolled into that and bring Spider-Gwen, Silk, all those characters from the Spider-Verse comic, and it'd be awesome. And I think we've got enough build-up of all of them. It'd be interesting if they did some flipping and had like Jamie Foxx's Electro be a hero trying to stop the Venom Spider-Man. But I don't think they have access to Venom right now because of Sony.
Well, I believe they may allow them in the future to do it, but just being what's going on right now with Carnage and everything, I think it might not be done yet. But it would be interesting to see, because they have to do, Tom Holland with Venom, which would be very interesting to see how that goes.
That'd be good, yeah. I think for me, that's what the last Venom movie missed. It missed the interaction between Spider-Man and Venom. That sort of interchange. They did. Hardy did great with the voices and the personality and all that. That was cool. But if you had Tom Holland Spider-Man cracking jokes in the middle of all that,
Yeah.
it would have been killed. Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, the trailer looks pretty decent. I mean, I'm always excited to see a video game movie, but the track record, they haven't been fairly that well-made movies, but this one looks like it has potential. I mean, of course, it's still going to be a video game movie. I think it's still going to have its little issues, but I think it's still going to be a pretty decent film.
I think it's going to be fun. I think that's what most people miss when they really start, oh, it wasn't a great movie. The plot was this, or the story was. I'm like, it's based on a video game where you beat each other up. I mean, it's not the piano.
Yeah.
So they're not shooting for Oscars, but they're shooting to have a good time. And I think what I've seen of the trailers, it looks fun. It looks creative. You see how Jax loses his arms and has to get the robot arms, and so it's like, yeah, okay.
And it's interesting too because they're doing it different than what actually happened. If I remember correctly, Jax lost his arms against somebody in the tournament. It wasn't from Sub-Zero because the games, they have their own storyline that it's very confusing, but it has a storyline. But
Yeah, that's why they don't stick to that. When they're making
exactly.
the movies. Like, well, you need to have played all the video games before we said that.
It's funny because it actually has a reverse time aspect and time travel. It's crazy.
Yeah,
But
time travel is the MacGuffin of everything. Thor, Love and Thunder.
again, that one we don't know too much, but we do know that I forgot what the name of his love interest was in the films, but she's coming to be a female
Foster.
Thor. And then once you mentioned about possibly a female Loki, do you think it's going to be our MCU Foster or multiverse Foster? Because it would actually make more sense if multiverse Foster was the female Thor that came in.
Potentially. I mean, it's there. If they brought her in as sort of, rather than Blake becoming Thor, Foster became Thor, that's possible. But I think they've already established Dr. Foster as a character. And we're already seeing like her number 2 person's working for Sword.
Yeah.
There's a lot of relationships there that they can play on to try to bring in a whole new version of Dr. Foster and explain that. Whereas they can just say, here's a hammer, have at it.
Yeah.
Because that version of Foster, Dr. Foster, is cool because she, in the comics, she has cancer. And so when she turns into Thor, she's big, healthy, and strong, but she can't stay Thor indefinitely. She has to turn back over a certain amount of time or something. And every time she does, she's dying a little bit more of cancer. So it's a weakness, strength kind of story. So
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll go that dark. Marvel's not really done that with the movies. So it gives us a different direction. I think that Marvel is really starting to explore this whole every superhero doesn't need to be a white dude. Spider-Verse really showed them that there's a whole market for superheroes of color, superheroes of, and so we're also getting the new Miss Marvel, which is a Pakistani girl with, she's an Inhuman who has powers, and she worships Miss Marvel, and so, or Captain Marvel, and so she becomes Miss Marvel. So that's going to be a regular series on Disney Plus too. So
I believe that's set for 2022.
Yeah.
With Moon Knight and She-Hulk around that same time.
Moon Knight and She-Hulk. Oh man, that's gonna be so awesome. See, when growing up, I remember we were watching TV, and we get the Saturday morning cartoons of the Super Friends or Spider-Man and his amazing friends, and it was like, man, if we could really get more of this. And I remember my brothers; they were like, nobody wants to watch all this. And now that's all they want to do is call me and go, hey, I don't understand why Falcon does this.
Yeah.
So, all right, so Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
Yep. It looks like it's going to be a lot more action-packed than, how would you say, WandaVision. It looks more, it's going to touch how the Captain America films were, or at least 2 and 3, with the fighting and, like, it'll show the hand-to-hand combat, that sort of content, which I'm thoroughly looking forward to. I think the villain from Captain America 3, Baron Zemo, is going to be one of the villains in the show. It's going to be interesting how they draw out his character. You know, him being the one that killed Black Panther's father, and Black Panther showing mercy to him and not getting revenge. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes down and the growth of his character, because we haven't seen him since then. So,
well, I think that there's a couple of points in there. One, some of Falcon and the Winter Soldier is going to be set in Madripoor. Madripoor was created in the Wolverine comic, and it's a little country island place in Asia where there's like there's the super rich and the super criminal. There's no middle class that lives in Madripoor. So I think it's interesting that they're incorporating that. That might lead us. I mean, I've actually heard predictions about Wolverine making an appearance. That Baron Zemo his history as a comic, from a comic book point, it goes back to the World War II, World War One. His great-great-grandfather was Baron Zemo, was a villain, and so forth and so on, all the way through. But the Baron Zemo in the comics now, he created a group called the Thunderbolts. He took a group of supervillains and he dressed them in new costumes and gave them new names, and they appeared as superheroes when the Avengers had disappeared and the Fantastic Four had disappeared for a time. And suddenly, you know, justice like a thunderbolt. And so you had these guys show up, and their goal was basically to pass themselves off as hero, get access to the Fantastic Four Tower, the Avengers, or whatever, and then use that access to steal
information,
money, or whatever. They never were really clear what their goal was, but they turned out they liked being heroes. So it'd be interesting is if we see Baron Zemo go that route
and become a good guy.
Begrudgingly.
Yeah, and that would be interesting too. Like if he does it out of spite in the beginning, but then at the end he actually likes being a hero, and just that would further go back to, you know, Black Panther showing mercy to him. I think that would actually be an interesting thing to go down.
A redemption path, going from what he did to what he could be. And that takes us, of course, to Black Panther. When we start thinking in terms of, we've lost the guy that played Black Panther, I think, you know.
Chadwick Boseman,
and the fact that at times they talked about replacing him. Then there was this talk about they can't replace him as T'Challa because T'Challa was, you know, he was T'Challa. But then there have been other actors and directors that have talked about, well, you know, we've had half a dozen Batmans, half a dozen Bruce Waynes. Why do we have to bury the character with the actor? He started this legacy. Maybe we should keep it going. But I don't really know how I feel about that at this point. I mean,
me personally, it's a different case with the Batmans. It's never been like this in a sense. It's him passing away. I believe it was I believe it was cancer that he passed away from. This hasn't happened before. I don't want him to be recast personally. There are many characters from his area, Wakanda, that can take the mantle of Black Panther, but not be T'Challa. He is going to be Black Panther for the rest of time until they redo the whole MCU and they do everything over again. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon in our lifetime. So he's going to be Black Panther for a long time, and I don't believe he should be recast. I even believe Kevin Feige said that they weren't recasting him.
They originally had said something about it, but then they began backpedaling. Because they didn't know how to react, and I mean, when something like this happens, you really don't know what direction to go, and you have to stumble a little bit before you make a final decision. But I've heard talk about the guy that played M'Baka, the gorilla guy, that, you know, maybe he could become Black Panther, which, he's such a great character as he is. In the comics, he's called the White Ape, and because he wears like this whole ape thing. In the comics, his sister became Black Panther because Black Panther is a non-gender specific superhero name. It's not like Spider-Man, it's Black Panther. Black Panthers are male or female, it doesn't matter. But Shuri is such a popular character by herself. I've heard Michael B. Jordan that he didn't actually die at the end of Black Panther. Because I mean, as soon as he passed out, T'Challa would be like, medical, and they would come and they'd save him because, you know, he's not going to let him die just to let him die. And so maybe he's been in a coma or whatever and comes out of it, and he's learned from the other side, from the other Black Panthers, and he's decided to embrace. And he's a big enough actor, and he could do it with enough respect.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the trick, because I mean, the minefield here is respect. It's like, you know, what this guy's put out, what the Black Panthers, that story that's already there. How do we play actual tribute to it.
Exactly.
So I don't envy them that. I think I've got everything off the card except for esports.
Esports.
What's happening with esports at Fayetteville State?
So we recently just started esports in January. We have a lot of teams going on. We've got a league team. We actually have a couple of 2K players, NBA 2K, which they're pretty good at the game. And we have a Madden player, I believe. So we're in a couple of games right now. We have a lot of good looks in our teams, and I think we have a lot of room for growth.
Cool. And is it true that English is putting together a Pac-Man team?
I'm
It's
not
an
sure
inside joke.
about
You had to be there.
I'm not sure about that.
I've been watching the esports space. Looks good. I think the university is showing real commitment to getting it growing and getting it bigger and more popular. And, I've had to have this conversation a couple times to people that just don't get it. Hey, you can get a biology degree at almost any university, but you can come to this university and play esports and get a degree in biology.
Exactly.
I know where my kids are talking about going to school because, video games are an integral part of their life, and it's an integral part of the kids coming up, the students that are coming up, they're coming to us. And, we have to engage them where they're at.
Yeah.
So I'm real impressed. Dr. Frobish and the university have really done a lot to make the esports space awesome.
I'm excited to see where it goes from here. We're just in the starting phase right now.
Cool.
So once it starts growing, we go into more games. We start going into different avenues in the esports area. It's going to blow up like crazy. I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, well, I have to get in there and play me some Pac-Man.
Maybe.
Hey. All right, well, Geek Talk, we've talked about a lot of stuff today. And, they didn't give me a clock, so I'm just working on my own. So however long this went. We could be wrong about a lot of stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm excited the way things are going. Superheroes are now sort of mainstream, and we're starting to see the genre is wider than people have always thought. You know? So WandaVision definitely opened this up to a whole new kind of discussion.
Exactly. And now being that you don't have to go to the movies now, it's going to be on. They're splitting everything up now with the shows and the movies, and everything ties in together. It's never been done like this before. So it's going to be crazy, the next Infinity War event that we have, how it all just ties in together.
And DC is just dragging behind.
Exactly.
But we are getting the Snyder version. We didn't really talk about that. I know that was a big thing. You're excited about that?
I'm excited for the Snyder Cut. Not many people like Justice League. I'm going to say Justice League was not that great of a movie.
It was washed down.
Yeah, it was a letdown. I enjoyed the characters, but it felt something was missing. What was missing was Snyder. And I'm a big Snyder fan. Zack Snyder, Watchmen, Batman vs. Superman. I'm really excited to see how it turns out. It looks like he has a lot of stuff going into this movie that was missed from the other film.
It's been like 3 hours or something.
3 to 4 hours, and they had to do, I think, some reshoots. Of course, there's the dark side stuff we didn't even see in the original film. The villain from that film as well, I forgot what his name was.
Steppenwolf?
Steppenwolf looks completely different.
Oh, yeah,
so,
he doesn't look like it's weird.
Yeah, he doesn't look like he's wearing like leather armor or something. So it's going to be a different film, and that's what I'm most excited for.
Well, come back as soon as Snyder Cut drops. We'll probably film right after it, which is like March 19th. Is that
Yeah,
what we were told?
most definitely.
And we're going to have a conversation about it because I'm a huge Green Lantern fan, and I know Green Lantern, he's not in it a lot, but he's in it more than he was in the original Justice League cut, which was a flyby overhead.
Yep.
Look, there goes the Green Lantern. So come back and come see us at FSU, Fayetteville State. Come join esports.
Yep.
Hoorah. Oh, forgot. There's the card.